What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Eat, Train, Prosper. This is episode 224, and we are talking about the benefits of using your fitness, specifically in the context of being outdoors. It has been 4 weeks, I think, since we have recorded a podcast, potentially three. Brian was doing a big family trip, which he's going to dive into. And I have been in the ringer, slinging training, nutrition, coaching, and doing my best to reintegrate a aspect of my life that I have always really, really enjoyed, which prompted us to talking about this episode. So we're going to get into that. But before, Brian, as always, can you kick us off with some updates, please?
Yeah, I have a lot of updates. Sorry to waste y'all's time here, but it's been like 4 weeks since we've chatted. So I'm just going to take you through my life recently. So the last time we chatted was just before we left for our 10-day road trip to the canyons, and it was awesome. We did 2 nights in Black Gunnison Canyon, 2 nights in Moab where we did Canyonlands and Arches, and then we drove to Grand Canyon where we stayed there for 4 nights, 3 or 4 nights. And it was awesome. Like Aaron asked me offline what my, favorite canyon was. And the interesting answer is that, we see the Grand Canyon in all of these images and pictures and videos and movies and stuff. And it's amazing. It's so grand. But I think because it's the Grand Canyon, it has this like aura about it. And I expected it to be amazing. So it did. It lived up to my expectations for sure. It was amazing. But Canyonlands, and even Black Gunnison in some ways, but Canyonlands was so cool. It was just so expansive, and everywhere you walked was just like 1,000-foot drops right and left as you're like traversing these hikes around it. And you can see endless distance of just these insane red rock structures everywhere. And I started getting curious about, because I knew that stuff was underwater back in the day. And I was curious how long ago it was that it was underwater, all of it, like all of Utah, Colorado, all of that. And they said between 80 and 95 million years ago, all of that was underwater, which in the grand scheme of things, like, dude, I mean, to fathom 80 to 90 million years is like insane to even think about, since we live like 100 years in our life. But in the grand scheme of the existence of Earth, 80 to 90 million is about 2% of our existence. So 2% of our existence ago, all of this stuff was underwater. And it's just insane to see the history. And you can see like these marks on the rocks where the erosion and where the water like would slowly build or fade over time. And it was just really, it put like life in perspective in some ways, just to see how awesome, in like the true word of the sense, awesome, all of that is. So that was cool. 10-day road trip, a lot of time with the kids. Got some good hikes in, did a little bit of lifting. I think over the 10 days, I did like 3 hikes, including one by myself, which was a workout. The other ones were more like with kids. And then I ran once, and I think I got 3 resistance training sessions in. So like not my normal daily workout structure, but enough to at least maintain. And the one hike I did by myself, I woke up at 5 a.m. when we were in the Grand Canyon, and I went down this trail called Angel Bright, which goes, if you were to go all the way down, it would take you all the way from the top of the canyon into the bottom of the canyon. The canyon is 1 mile of a vertical depth down. So think 5,280 feet of like vertical depth, but it's 6 miles for you to like traverse the canyon and get to the bottom. So I didn't do that. That would have been insane to go like 6 miles down and then 6 miles back up again. But I ran 2 miles down, and then I hiked 2 miles up. And that was amazing. It took me a little over an hour. Such a great workout. So beautiful. Loved that day. And then we came back from the canyon, and we went immediately into having 8 days of visitors. So my brother and his niece came and spent 5 days with us. And we did some cool activities and stuff. And then my buddy from college, my college roommate, came with his 3 kids. And we went to like Estes Park and did hiking and hung out and went to the pool and stuff like that. Great end of the summer, just extremely busy, 18 days nonstop with no childcare or anything. And so I am just so amped to be back in Colorado, to have the kids back in school. They started a few days ago, having my like 7 to 8 hours of time for myself each day and all of that. And then just two quick other updates here. My birthday's this Friday. I guess by the time this comes out, it'll probably be my birthday. I'll be 44, which is kind of wild. I guess officially entering into my mid 40s. We have a huge concert that we're going to with a ton of friends on Saturday. So Folsom Field, which is where CU Boulder plays football. They're hosting Rufus du Sol, which is, international famous EDM group. So we're going to go with a bunch of friends to that. Really excited about it. And ultimately, I think that this Grand Canyon trip, where I only worked out, I guess, like 4 official times over 10 days, kind of taught me that it's okay to not do something every day. I've kind of got stuck in this structure that I really do enjoy, where every day I'm doing something like alternating cardio and weights. And I think in a perfect world, like, I do enjoy having that structure. I like doing one hard thing every day that gets my heart rate elevated, that sort of thing. But it also was really kind of nice and reaffirming to realize that I don't have to do something every day, and I don't get out of shape. I don't lose my fitness. And so since then, I've even been a little more able to be like, okay, today I don't really feel like working out. I think I'm just going to go for like a really long walk and listen to a podcast. And that's okay. And then I come back the next day and have a better workout. And so actually 2 days ago, that's what I did. I was supposed to do legs 2 days ago, and I just wasn't feeling it. I just wanted to be outside. I didn't want to have this like dungeon leg dread session. So I put it off one day, and I felt better yesterday and had an incredible leg workout, like set some current PRs for some of my movements, super sore today. And it just reminds me that it's better to push a session off to a day where you're going to be able to give it a better effort than to force it necessarily on a day where maybe you don't want to. And honestly, like, sometimes those days where I don't want to and I do it, it's like you get started and then it's an amazing session and it's fine. But I think it's just having that freedom of mindset to be able to say, you know what, I think I will push it off because I'll be more motivated to do this tomorrow, and therefore I'll get more enjoyment out of it. So anyway, just some kind of introspective thoughts from me as we wrap up the summer here. What is going on with you?
Yeah. So first of all, happy early birthday,
Thanks,
Brian.
dude.
You will make 44 look very, very good. I am sure.
Appreciate it.
I have some thoughts on the back end of the final thing that you said there. And I think from my experience, environment plays a very large role in that. And I'm finding myself a little bit yearning for that environment right now, where I could definitely see, like, having a home gym is always kind of the dream, right? You get to choose what's in there. It's your domain. However, you are solely responsible for the cultivation of that environment too. And sometimes, I know for me, I get a little bit cabin feverish, right? Especially, I work from home. Most days of the week, the only time I leave the house is to go on a walk or to go to the gym, right? So if I'm not going to the gym, like, I'm kind of not leaving my house. And you can have the nicest house in the world. If you never leave, you kind of start to hate it a little bit. And I find that was is one of the beautiful things about Undefeated Gym in Bali. That environment is oozing with motivation, with drive. If you're not feeling it and you're like, oh, I don't really feel like training today, if you just get there, it permeates into you and you're ready to train, because there are dozens of people fucking getting after it. And I think, and that was that was the beauty of CrossFit. The culture and the environment was incredible, right? Because there was such high energy. Everyone that you could see was working as hard as they possibly can. And it would be unreasonable for you not to do the same or get infected by that type of energy. So I do think that is why, when you are searching for a gym or that sort of thing, or evaluating gyms, the environment can be a very, very big positive or negative contributing factor.
Yeah, it's definitely, you have a different motivation factor when you just have to walk downstairs and do it on your own.
It definitely requires a higher one there. Kind of on the back end of that, ironically, one of the things that my soul update, I should say, came on the back of yours, is I'm not necessarily enjoying my training or the goals that I have set. Um, One of the things, just to be a little bit more transparent and share, now that there's these other aspects in my life, like a family and a child on the way, I am not necessarily speed running, but kind of hurrying up some of my goals because I want to be able to transition to other things in my life. And one of my pretty much my only remaining kind of personal fitness goal, sort of competition goals, I want a top 5 placing at a pro show. And what that means is I have to take everything very seriously in order to achieve that, right? Specifically with my lateral delts and my upper back. I am not enjoying my training and the pursuit of it, but I am very committed to achieving that top 5 placement. So I am just in the throes of it. And 3 to 4 of my training sessions per week are, I'm here because I said I was going to do this, and I will keep my word to myself. It isn't enjoyable. I would say, if I'm really being honest, going to the gym right now is probably one of the least enjoyable parts of my day, but I am committed to that outcome because I said that I would. So while I do think it is important to be able to have those, keep your word to yourself, I am being transparent with everyone that I'm low enjoyment chunk of it. Just to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, those periods I think are natural. Like, training motivation ebbs and flows, and especially because you're coming off the end of extreme success in your goals. Like, you literally in the last year achieved a pro bodybuilder status in your first pro show or first pro attempt. So I think it's natural to kind of have a little bit of a come down after that, and then to stay like directly focused on this thing that you've put forth as like a future goal that's still far enough away that it doesn't feel like it's right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a little bit of kind of what takes us into the topic of today. I'm yearning to do different things, right? I want to be outside more. Every time I drive up the canyons, there's the dudes and women riding their road bikes, up the canyons. And I think, fuck, I want to get into that. But then I have to, not relegate, but like be honest with myself. Like, Aaron, you're 235 pounds. Like, you can't do that, and I have to do this thing first, so that, because I said that I would, so that I can move into these next phases of things that interest me. Like, I want to get into, I mean, I'm not running, let's be honest, but I want to get into doing like bigger hikes and longer hikes. And I want to get into road biking and spending more time outside and mountain biking and using the things that are in close proximity with us with this move. But I can't chase that and being a top level, men's physique pro at the same time. So I am putting a lot more pressure to get this thing done so that I can get to, the fun parts, or what I'm telling myself are the fun parts on the back end.
Yep. I feel that. That makes sense. Well, I can't wait for you to eventually get into some sort of hardcore cardio pursuit. I think that's going to be a hilarious development in your life.
Okay. So the topic today being the benefits of using your fitness. Brian has alluded to in his intro just the positives of with the trip they just took, and being able to spend that time with the family. The kids are old enough now to go outside and do some of those things. And one of the things that I have found is every Sunday I get up and I go hiking. It's very up there as the favorite parts of my week, and just the awe of what it is, the access, the minimally accessed and touched parts of the canyons and stuff. And the elation is a very good term to use, that I get from being out there, having my heart rate up, using my fitness, moving my body. And one of the things that I was curious and slightly concerned about was the last time I did any consistent kind of serious quote unquote hiking was when we were here last time, but I was 190 pounds. And like I just said, I'm 45 pounds heavier. And I was concerned that I would suck at it and that I would be dying, wouldn't be able to like keep up and these things in it. It has actually not been the case. I feel like it costs me more a bit now, but I can still perform at a similar capacity, which I'm really, really excited about. But I love being able to go out there, and because I train hard and my heart rates are elevated in training and stuff, it does provide for me at least a pretty good carryover into hiking, which is pretty much the only, cardio modality that I really care to be able to perform well at, right now. And it's really enjoyable to know that, that the time that I spend in the gym, the muscle that I've built, the endurance with the muscle that I've built, like I can go use it in these endeavors of being outside, because then the positives of being outside, being in nature, the mood that it helps you with, and in the perspective, you mentioned that earlier with just standing and looking at the canyons, the perspective it helps give you on life, and the time to reflect is my favorite one. The last 2 weeks I've been out by myself. Jenny just hasn't been feeling that great, and I decided, like, all right, I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna make you go. You don't feel good, right? That time is just reflecting on my life and stuff, where there is no cell phone service or anything like that. So even if I did want to dick around on your favorite, doom scrolling app, I can't. And it really, really just adds such a nice value into my week, and I love starting my one day off with that.
Yeah, that's great that you're still like able to do that all at the heavier body weight. I've noticed it similar with me, where I was worried since I gained those 15 pounds starting TRT that it was also going to affect me, but I haven't noticed any negative really effects on my cardiovascular ability. So that's been awesome. I do want to touch on one of the things you said, which was awe. And there's a book that I have been delving into, actually audio. I find it interesting when people say they read a book, but they're actually like listening to a book, because I do that all the time. I'm like, oh, I read this book, but really I just like consumed it on Audible. But the book is called Awe, The New Science of Everyday Wonder. And it's by a guy named Dr. Keltner, Dacher. And it is, it's really interesting because it talks about the energy inducing aspect of noticing awe. And I think noticing is kind of like a key word there, because there's awe around us everywhere, anytime we're outside in nature. And whether you notice it and like consume it and internalize it, I think changes what you get from the awe that's around you. And so simply like going out for a hike in nature is great, because you're getting, the oxygen and the green and the nature and all of these things that are happening outside of kind of your purposeful intent. But then you can amplify that experience by simply noticing all of the awe around you, or noticing how the leaves are changing colors, or noticing, the way that root sticks out of the ground and creates this like interesting connection to the tree or whatever. I mean, there's so many different things that you could notice. The clouds, like look at the clouds today. They're so amazing. Like just instead of being, noticing. And I think that makes the awe much more transformational and powerful.
Yeah, that was funny, because I never thought about that at all. But there was one point during the hike where I was in this densely like forest type section, and there was one tree that was so much like wider, thicker than the other ones. And I stopped and thought, I was like, I wonder like how old that tree is. That was probably the first tree in this section or something like that, because I think it had to be 5 feet in diameter, like the thickness of it. I remember, this was just on Sunday, so 2 days ago, and just stopping and thinking like, fuck, that tree is gigantic relative to all the other ones. And that's exactly what you were talking about.
Yep, exactly. And it's energy inducing. Like I find that even if I'm feeling like low energy or mentally lethargic, as soon as I open my eyes and I start trying to notice, like actively notice the things around me, I feel like it induces energy inside of me and I feel much better. It's kind of crazy how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't noticed anything like that, but I haven't really actually thought to try it. But the mountains do kind of do that. One of the things that I will always say to myself, because when over time, the things just become normal, right? You go from making your whatever fucking pizza job in university to your first, adult job, and you're making whatever 4 times the amount of money, and it feels like incredible. And then 3 months later, it's just another Wednesday or paycheck day sort of thing. One of the things here that I'm really doing my best to stay very new and appreciate every single time is the mountains when I'm driving home. Right. So like anytime I'm coming back and driving east, like the mountains behind the house and everything are just huge, and always trying to keep that top of mind of being in awe of the mountains still because of how cool they are. Now, kind of shifting a little bit from just simply being outdoors to one of the things that you wanted to talk about, which is the Misogi that has come up on the podcast a few times. Is there a currently planned one?
So what's interesting is, no, we don't have one necessarily on the agenda, but a buddy of mine who flag football season just started for Bryson. So they had their first practice the other day. And I was talking with one of the dads, and he was just like, hey, do you want to do the Skyline Traverse in a couple weeks? And the Skyline Traverse is what we did for our Misogi last year when we did it, or whatever, a year and a half ago. And we had mentally prepared. We didn't physically prepare, because that's the whole point, is to kind of go in unprepared. But mentally we were prepared. We had this date in sight. It was like, okay, we have this big day. I got to prepare for this 8+ hour experience. This dude literally, he's a cardio guy, but he was like, yeah, you just want to do the Skyline Traverse like next weekend? And I was like, dude, like for me, this is a huge, massive undertaking. And for you, it's just like another day of going out and doing some cardio. But I do think I'm going to do this with him. I'm trying to find a day with Kim where I can basically be gone from like 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., assuming we'll do the Misogi and then get some beers and some food afterward or whatever. So I think I'm going to do that again. And I guess it will be less Misogi-ish because I know that I can already complete it, but he's pushing me to run part of it. So last time it took us 7.5 hours to summit, and then 8.5 hours, to get back down to the car. The goal this time, I think, would be to try to summit it in 6 hours. So see if I can cut off an hour and a half of time by running a little bit instead of hiking all of it. So maybe the downhills or the flats, I try to jog a little bit. I'm a bit nervous, not about my physical fitness, but honestly, mostly about my feet and my muscles, like cramping and stuff. I remember the first time I did it, that about halfway through, maybe on the latter half of the hat, like 60% in, there's like a 3-hour descent that you go down, because the first half of it is a lot of climbing, and then you have like a 3-hour gradual descent. And on that descent, I remember my feet really hurting and my calves and quads starting to cramp up from like having to resist the descent, the eccentric contractions,
Yeah.
And so it's weird how like going up will burn your muscles, but it's not so destructive. And then going down is really where like the joint structures and stuff really get tested. So I'm a little nervous as to see how my body will hold up through that, especially if we're trying to run part of it. But that's the plan. I think ultimately I'll go talk about Misogi more in a little bit, but yeah, that's the plan right now.
So the kind of the premise, and I know we've talked about this before, but in the event that this is one of the first episode you're listening to, simply having like a very hard physical endeavor challenge, sort of event planned. And if I'm not mistaken, Brian, the additional, the context is around something like a 60% chance of success, right? You might fail
it's 50,
it. So
it's supposed to be 50-50. So
okay,
you choose
50,
an event.
50.
You choose an event where there's like a 50% chance you fail. And that's why this Skyline Traverse maybe isn't quite a Misogi, because I think I go into it with like more of like a 90% chance that I'm going to succeed. It's still obviously a monumental physical undertaking. But I think aside from the fact that you're potentially facing failure, which has its own benefit, obviously, I think the best benefit to doing any of these really hard physical challenges like this are simply the perspective that it creates on everyday life. That if you can get through this thing that's so daunting and so challenging and you survive it, then, the general trials and tribulations that you go through on a daily basis in life, whether it's parenting or work or, self-growth or all of these things, they all seem much more manageable in the face of this thing that you just went through and accomplished.
I have some questions on the back end of that. It's in full transparency, a little bit from selfish
Mm-hmm.
reasons. Do you find, because I know we have, what are you? You're about 6 years older than me. Do you find as you've gotten older that your pursuit of some of these sorts of really hard, challenges is increasing? Is it decreasing? Do they have, I would say, a more meaningful impact to your life now, less
Mm.
than to, let's do maybe an example, right? You're about to be 44, so that's a good anchor. We'll maybe do 34 and then 24 to help frame that time frame
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
part for the question.
Yeah, I didn't really do much hard stuff when I was 24. I pretty much just partied and lifted weights so that I looked good. And I didn't really even do much cardio. I was just trying to have as much fun as I could. So I don't think I contextualized hard things as even like being that important back then.
I would agree with that.
34 was a bit of a hybrid because we had the CrossFit era in there. And CrossFit in its own is like a bit Misogi-ish, like certain CrossFit things. Like you know, doing a competition where there's 2 or 3 days of workouts that you're doing 2 or 3 workouts a day, that is a bit Misogi-ish in all of the prep that goes into it, all of the mental and physical fortitude. And then the sense of accomplishment that comes out of it, I think, is all very Misogi-ish. So I think through CrossFit, I did a lot of hard things that was mediated by having the community. So I think there's that aspect too that's kind of hard to separate out. Is you feel like it's part of your identity, and so it doesn't necessarily feel like this monumental challenge that you're forcing yourself to do. It feels like something that you have to do because it's how you define yourself. And so the CrossFit was maybe like a hybrid between being 24 and 44 in that middle area. And then at 44, I think I do seek out more hard stuff. Um, and it's interesting. I don't really exactly know why, aside from I just think that it is more valuable. I think just as you get older, you become more introspective and more self-aware, and you realize the way in which your actions impact your mentality more. So I would just say at this age, that would be maybe more the motivating factor there.
I really like your answer. I would say I think mine aligns similarly. As I've gotten older, the value that I place on doing hard things has grown dramatically. Whereas in my early 20s, late 20s, I would even say into early 30s, I tried to avoid it because of I didn't want to have to deal with the failure or
Mm-hmm.
being kind of different or something like that, having people asking questions about it. Just the general avoidance. The CrossFit was there, yeah, but like you said, that was a lot of community driven. There was pressure. Obviously, anyone that knew me at the time, I would do things, but I was a miserable wreck throughout the entirety of it. Whereas now, the only things that I'm really interested in doing are these big, hard things. And I think more so because I'm feeling the pressure of time a little bit, and I'm afraid that I'm gonna, blink a couple times. I'm gonna be 56, and a lot of those years are behind me, and I can't do them
Mm-hmm.
anymore. So I'm really trying to make best use of the years that I have, the time that I have, and doing hard things and setting these really big goals to chase down, to hunt down, provides me a lot of accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
And it's inward accomplishment, not an accolade or something like that I've achieved or received, but the recognition of myself, that of who I can become, or I can
Mm-hmm.
overcome these things. And I get a lot of, positive reinforcement from that.
Yeah. No, I think that that's definitely right. And I think that's a mature position to take. I've talked about it on this podcast when I turned 40, because now we've been doing this for 5 plus 6 years already. But when I turned 40, I talked about how I was sitting in this hot tub in Estes Park by myself. And I was just like, in my brain, at 39 and 364 days old, I didn't really think about my mortality so much. And then like literally I turned 40 and suddenly I'm hit with this all in my face being like, wow, I'm 40 now. I could potentially be at like the halfway point of this journey. I mean, who knows where my halfway point is, but in theory, 40 could be my halfway point. It could be 30, it could be 50, whatever. But in my mind, that was very meaningful. Like to sit there in that hot tub by myself, chosen on my own to be on my own on my birthday, my 40th birthday. Was so weird to do. But I did that. And I started getting like depressed thinking about how I'm on now this like down slope of life. Like I'm on the back end of life. And in that moment, that's really where I decided to commit to doing more cardio and stuff. It wasn't necessarily doing hard things, but it was doing things that are going to foster this more like longevity and health in focused way that I want to go forward in the future. And I want to be there, for my kids. I want to see them grow old. I don't want to, like you said, 56 is an interesting number because 56 is actually how old I'm going to be when my last kid goes off to college. And so that number, when you said it, I was like, yeah, I've thought about that number a lot. Because that's, in some ways it's quite old from like a 30-year-old's perspective. 56 is quite old. From a 44-year-old's perspective, 56 no longer feels like that old because I don't think physically I've changed a ton negatively from 12 years prior. Like if you look at me at 32 to 44, I actually think in many ways I'm physically healthier than I was at 32. My joints don't hurt as much. My body feels good. My mind is doing great. Overall, I feel like a more centered, robust version of myself, to the point that I wonder at 56 if I'll look back and be like, yeah, I don't really feel that different from 44, or whether there's going to be a series of things that occur between those years that change that sense.
Yeah, I love that. And tying it back to the title of the episode with the benefits of using your fitness, the time goes by regardless, but what your life looks like at certain ages is extremely influenced in how you spend that time. And if you're someone who's, I don't know, 24 listening to this, you have about, I don't know, 6-7 years before things probably start to catch up to you. But once you hit around 30, 31, 32, 33, you generally want to start looking at your actions and the trajectory of what you would like your life to be in your, late 30s, maybe early 40s, those sorts of things. And I'm sure I'm sure for you, but even for me, I have friends that from high school or people that I spent my younger, more destructive years with, and they're saying things like, well, my knees at 39 just aren't the way they used to be. You know how it is. I'm like, I don't know how it is. My knees are fucking great. And I guarantee that I put extremely an extreme amount of more demand through my knees than you do. It's just the compounding years of the actions over those years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think with benefits of using your fitness is you get much more capable lifespan, right? And I can do things at 38 that are no different than I could do at 18 from a lot of like an output capacity sort of thing. And because I value being able to use my body in the capacity high output that I want to, using my fitness and the decisions through lifestyle and food and stuff that drive into that allow me to have much more of a high output capacity life that aligns with the youth that I want to maintain for as long as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think it's important to note that like with the way that people prioritize their bodies and health these days, it really has almost like saved us a decade of resilience. Like somebody at 44 from my parents' generation seems much older and physically fragile than I seem at 44, and that many of my other friends in the same period of life seem to feel at this age. So a lot has changed with the way people take care of themselves and the priorities that they have over the past generation. Yeah. So what do you think it is about, like, for you, you obviously spend a lot of your time in the gym. You go for walks, of course, around like maybe 1 or 2 walks a day. But what is it do you think about going out and doing those hikes and being in that expansive nature, surrounded by it on all sides, essentially being like in the mountains? Like you're not just climbing a mountain, you're like surrounded by mountains and nature. Like, what is it about that feels to you so much more like reaffirming and clarifying than just simply like going for a walk around the neighborhood or being in the gym?
It's a really good question. I think I have always had a draw towards the mountains, very similarly to how, some people just love the beach. The beach is their spot. It's, de-stressing. They love the sun and they could just go to the beach and sit there on a towel for 6 hours and have the time of their life. I think that's how the mountains are for me. I remember being younger and learning about certain mountains and the size of them and stuff. And then when I first took my first trip to, I did not go to Boulder that trip, but Denver and Steamboat Springs and driving out there, it hit me and yeah, mountains are it for me. I want to move to the mountains. And it's taken me 14 years, since that trip or 12, 14, whatever to get here. But I think that's what it is. I've always loved the mountains and the high altitude and the trees and the views and the landscapes. So I think that's why I'm just preferential to them.
What do you like? You spent a lot of time, obviously, with me in San Diego as well, and the water has its own kind of magical allure to it. I also love the mountains. I find both to be uniquely beneficial and impressive. What I love about the mountains is the sturdiness of them, how they're just not going anywhere. They're just there. And when you stare at them, it's like staring at something confident and sturdy and strong. But I think the opposite of that is what the ocean presents, which is kind of like, it is sturdy in a sense, but it's also constantly moving and changing. And so when I stare at the ocean and I watch the waves come in and crash and I watch the water move, or even it can happen like on a creek or a river, like as I'm going for a walk and I notice the water like lapping up over the rocks or something, there's something totally different, but equally awesome in the true sense of the word of watching water move as there is watching mountains be sturdy, if that makes sense.
The ocean kind of scares me if I'm honest. Not in like scares me where like I won't go in the water, but have you ever been somewhere one year when we were in Bali, whatever storm trajectory, the waves were gigantic, like 14-foot waves. And it happened to be the first year when we lived within like walking distance to them. And Jenny and I went down there and we're standing, not even on the beach, probably a solid, I don't know, 60 yards, something like that from the waves. And I just remember being like, fuck that. Like the power, the strength, and like how angry they were. And I was like, yeah, no way. I'm not going anywhere near that. So I've always had a bit of a very trepidatious respect for the ocean, but I can't say that I love it per se. I've lived many years at the beach enough to know that I don't care about the beach.
So you don't love just like sitting there and watching the waves just like lap in and lap out and seeing like the calmness and the tranquility and the constant movement?
You know what I think it is? You don't really ever get the beach to yourself. So, I mean, you can if you go at 3 a.m. or something, but normally at the beach, there's other people around. There's often, unfortunately, like garbage and things like that. Like the humans are often ruining it. Whereas I can go up into these mountains and like this hike I did this past weekend, I saw 3 people total on the entirety of my way. So you get generally untouched, unfucked by humans. Which I generally like.
One of the other things I think that's really unique about the mountains too is that you can see tons of unique wildlife that you wouldn't see in everyday life. So like when we were on our Grand Canyon trip, we saw so many elk that by the end of the trip, we'd be like, look, kids, elk. And they're just like, another elk, whatever. It just wasn't even like impressive anymore. And then we saw these like little mountain goats and watching them traverse these like incredibly steep cliffs, and their hooves are just so precise that they're able to just traverse this stuff and dart down it and dart up it and jump from thing to thing. And like, they're just so confident and so safe. And those are the things that like in everyday life, you'd never see like a mountain goat just walking around your neighborhood. And even when you look at the ocean, it's very rare that you actually see any ocean creatures because they're always existing under the water. And then when you see a dolphin come up or a whale come up, it's like, oh my God, like blah, blah. It's like this insane thing. But you see a lot more of that awesomeness when you're out in the mountains hiking. Like every single time I go in the mountains, I see some kind of wildlife.
Yeah, that's it's cool. I haven't gotten over the necessary like fear yet of it.
You're scared of the ocean. You're scared of the animals.
Well,
dude, it's just
okay,
fearful.
So I lied. It's not like the chipmunks and stuff. Like up here, there's moose and bear.
Right.
And people regularly see moose and bear. And I guess I haven't had enough experiences to know if it's okay or if I should, or if like that there's a problem. We saw last time we were here, there was a moose off the trail. And it was the first time I ever saw one. And I didn't realize how fucking big they were.
Yeah. And they're
like
mean
an SUV.
too. Yeah. Elk are nice for the most part, but moose can be mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's, up here, there's rattlesnakes, there's moose, and there's bear. So I think I need a little bit more skill and preparation before I can be super comfortable with those sorts of things happening.
Yeah, I feel that. But it is nice. It is like really awesome to see it from far away where you feel safe.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Cool. So a little bit different of an episode, of course, but hopefully with the remaining weeks of summer and it being nice, Brian and I have inspired some of you guys, if you are in close proximity or nearest proximity, to go on maybe a little adventure this weekend. Get outside, get your heart rate up, use some of your fitness, use some of the lunges and squats to take a big hike and get outside and enjoy some things that Brian and I get such, strong value in our lives out of.
And then make sure to take notice of all the awe around you because it will change your whole demeanor and your sense of perspective.
All right, B. We will be back next week with things a little bit more our pace. Talk to you next week.
All right, bye.